And here we go with another one of the voices of the foothills. I'm meeting for the first time a gentleman that is heading up a place called CooperRiis here in Polk County. And I wasn't real sure what CooperRiis stood for, and he's going to explain it to us. But he's one of the many interesting people who have come to this area, and that might be one of the first questions I ask. How did you end up in Polk County, North Carolina? This is Mr. I'm trying to get the Mr. Stucker. Your first
Virgil.
name again?
Virgil Stucker.
Yeah. I was wanting to call you Vernon. No. That's not Vernon. I change people's names sometimes. Okay. I'm trying to change the world. Now, is that a big undertaking?
That's great. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Well, okay. Virgil. May I call you Virgil?
Sure, please do.
This is an informal show, and the daily, the Tryon Daily Bulletin has decided to let us acquaint the world because we're a dot on the map, but we're the crossroads of the world here in Polk County.
Well, that sounds like a very good way to put it.
Yeah. Well, you know, we have people from all over the world who come here. They like the looks of it. They come back and decide when they want to maybe slow down the pace a little bit. They end up in Polk County, but they don't retire. They keep contributing.
Well, that's a very good thing. Because I think retiring prematurely with wisdom in your heart and soul and not having a way to provide that to others is a very sad thing.
Well, you know, you can give money to places. You can contribute your money, which is good. And they do that. People, I find here, are very generous for supporting the arts. And, of course, we're full of the arts, music, theater, and so forth. But they're generous with their wallets as well, which helps to keep things going.
Oh, certainly. I mean, everything that I've done in my career has been based on private philanthropy, people who are willing to donate their resources. But more than that, it's really people willing to donate their time, energy, intellect, wisdom in order to help create things that basically end up trying to change the world, as you said.
Well, I don't know whether we're going to change the world here, but we're going to try to attract people from around the world because with this internet system now, we're never isolated.
Yeah, well, that's correct. I mean, a lot of people actually find us here in Polk County through the internet. They do come here actually from all over the world. Our residents so far in the first 10 years have been from 42 different states, 5 different countries. So it's we are known as an internationally renowned, I guess, mental health recovery program. Actually, some people call us more like a recovery college for people with serious mental health conditions. And most of the people that go through here are able to really move on with very productive and fulfilled lives after the program.
I think that I've never heard that term used when I've heard of CooperRiis, and I've heard of it since we first moved here. I've been here only 4 years, but I've never heard it referred to as a sort of college. But we'll get into that as to what you're doing, because mental health has become a great problem in this country. It seemed like maybe we're just more aware. Of course, there are more people now here, but we're more aware of this problem that can be helped.
Indeed, I would say the biggest problem is not mental health driven. It's what we do in response to people who have mental health issues. Some of the problems include the fact that we have not treated people with mental health conditions properly. Our community-based systems have not been adequate. We've turned people to the streets. There are about 600,000 in jail, most of whom don't need to be there. We wrongly think that people with mental illness are people we should be afraid of. And the statistics show us that that's just simply not true. This is the 4th community that I've helped to start and run. And so I have experienced this lifestyle all around the country with my family and I. My wife and I raised 4 children living in an environment where at least half the people were people with serious mental illness. Most often we had greater concern for our next-door neighbors as far as being people who would be more dangerous than the people that we were working with. Not to say that our next-door neighbors here aren't great people. The point is that people with mental illness are not likely to be harmful. And unfortunately, what's sweeping the nation now is wrongly placed concern.
Just stick them in, a lot of times, put them in prison and lock them away from all humanity.
Yeah, and then if you proceed down that path, and then you end up realizing that 25% of families have a family member with a serious mental health condition. 25. One out of
Wait a minute, 25%?
One out of every 4 families. But families are very slow to put their hands up and say, I know someone or I have someone in the family. So if we end up saying, okay, let's just imprison all these people, or let's just be afraid of them, it's like if we look in the mirror, we'll realize that we're looking at ourselves as those that we need to be concerned about. If you think about what the country has done, we used to call it mental retardation. Now it's called developmental disability, and all the great things we do for people with those issues, like what are them?
I wish I could help you.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a developmental disability, you're likely to have very good services. You have all these, events and things for the handicapped, so to speak. But people with mental illness are 3 times the number of people with developmental disabilities. And
is this in our genes? Is some of this inherited?
Very little of it. There may be a genetic impact, but at best it might explain about 20% of the mental health condition. But even if you come into life sort of genetically loaded with a mental health predisposition to having a condition, you deal with whatever with whatever hand you're dealt with.
You deal with, yeah.
You deal with it, and it doesn't mean that you're going to become mentally ill. If you've had a parent who had depression or even schizophrenia, that does not mean at all that you're going to become ill yourself.
But it's a great problem, and I thank heavens we're just now beginning to cope with that problem, or to remedy the problem as best we can in this country. Because, as you say, so many of these crimes that are committed, do you feel that if given maybe previous help, that some of those could have been prevented?
Absolutely. And, right now the press is focusing too much on trying to identify people who've committed crimes with mental illness, and it's just simply not true. Most of the crimes in this country are perpetrated by people who do not have a mental illness. One statistic that I think is important is, yes, maybe people with mental illness are more likely to sort of in a state of confusion strike out at someone or maybe hit someone, but they are not likely to be involved in serious violence. Only 3% of the time, if there is violence perpetrated by someone who has a mental illness, is there a gun involved. There are far more people who are using guns to do damage to other people that have nothing to do with mental illness. So we have overly identified the current gun issues with people who have mental illness, and it's just simply not true.
I lived in a small area in Ohio where we had one time the largest. It was an epileptic center, but people with epilepsy they considered almost mentally retarded, and they were put there. And some of them spent their lives there. They suddenly realized some time ago, within the last 30, 40 years, that, hey, wait a minute, they were associating mental health with the epilepsy. It's now it's a mental health facility where they are training people to go out into the world and live. Those who can. There are some who probably, there's nothing you can really do to change their way of life except to keep them safe.
Well, but the vast majority of people who have mental health conditions can learn to recover from those conditions and lead a fulfilled, functional life, earning a paycheck, having a family, living in a normal neighborhood just like you and me. Yeah. In fact, that's what they're doing. Yeah. You're
mostly concerned with rehabilitation here at CooperRiis. Do I understand? And where does the name CooperRiis come from?
Well, first of all, we are mostly concerned with, rehabilitation or recovery. Okay. By recovery, if you think about life, we all have some issue. It can be mental, it can be physical. Maybe some of us have had a cancer surgery. Whatever our challenge is, we learn to live with that challenge. That's what recovery is.
But sometimes we need help.
Yeah, and if you have a mental health condition, you can learn how to live a successful life despite that condition. Absolutely can. What we've unfortunately done too much of in this country is considered people with mental illness as sort of objects that need to be fixed. We have over-medicated them to such an extent that we now have tripled the number of people who are seen as being chronically ill with mental illness, where they did not need to be sort of medicated into a stupor where they could have recovered. We have instead left them in sort of warehouses in the worst parts of town where they're left to just to live, drink their cup of coffee, watch television, and have a life that is not functional. So that has been people who, you ask about the name of CooperRiis. John Cooper and Lisbeth Reese Cooper are a local couple who have a child who experienced mental health issues. And they looked around to try and find the best care for her and found very little available. Very little in the Southeast. They traveled around the country looking for the best kind of model to develop. And as a result of that, CooperRiis came into existence.
Great. Well, there are. Would you know approximately? It doesn't really matter figures, but are there many facilities like CooperRiis in this rehabilitation in the country?
There are far too few. I think we're at a time where we will shift back toward this kind of programming. For example, what we're doing is being written about. There's the author Oliver Sacks that some of you may know of, who wrote about us in the New York Review of Books, saying that there needs to be more places like CooperRiis, that we are restoring the lost virtues of what used to be called the asylum. Asylums used to be more like colleges that people would move through and learn skills while they were there. They were not places that people just moved into a sort of a dead end. That's what they were in the end and why they fell apart. But we are realizing there need to be, it's like, if you're going from being a young person to launching into a career, you most often go through this liminal space called college. And a lot of people make it through that, and they get some skills, they have some knowledge, and they start a career. If you have a mental health condition, you may have more challenges. So you need a place like a recovery college, like a CooperRiis, where you can learn the skills that you need to move forward with life.
Haven't some of our great artists, some of our great writers, some of our great historians, haven't they had mental problems?
Oh, absolutely. What's interesting is there's a book out, I can't remember the fellow's name, he's a psychiatric professor at Tufts University, and he's done a study of leaders, effective leaders, some of whom have had serious mental health conditions. And in part because of having those conditions, they knew adversity and knew how to overcome it. And in part for that reason, they were actually better leaders. Churchill is one of the biggest examples. I'm
reading The Last Lion at this point. It's about 5 inches thick, and I think I've made it through 2 inches. Very detailed. But some of the things I'm reading about, some of the things he did, he was a weird person in a way, and yet became one of our world's great leaders.
Yeah, he was someone who had who suffered from depression, suffered from mania, who had to learn how to cope with it, and because he learned how to cope with adversity, he became a good leader.
So some people can do this without help, such as CooperRiis?
Yes, certainly.
Do if someone has a problem with a child or a member of their family, and they are thinking, where can we go? What can we do about this? Do you have people make applications? Do you don't take just everybody here? What's that process?
We have altogether about 100 residents in our facility here in Polk County. We also opened a facility in Asheville, and we have about 10 homes around the community that people move through as a part of the community program.
So, in other words, you move them into the community during your they're still under your supervision.
Right. And they're getting jobs and they're learning how to live independently. So it's a whole continuum that we offer. And now as people apply to us, I mean, everyone has to be referred to us by a professional.
Okay.
And we do an evaluation to make sure that they're at a place where they could benefit from CooperRiis. They're at a place where, there's no concern about their personal safety, or we know that we're not admitting people who are likely to be harmful to others. It's almost like coming into a college. They have to show that they're ready for it.
Well, it's a beautiful campus.
Yeah, it is. From a physical point of view, it's probably one of the, if not the best physical facility for someone with mental illness in the country.
And it was established because the CooperRiis family, I use that as a hyphenated, but it's husband and wife, right?
Correct,
but they were from here, and that was the reason this was established here?
Well, they were living here as they decided they really wanted to create something, because there was very little in the Southeast, and they see this. It's initially sort of a southeastern program. About a third of our folks come from the Southeast, and then beyond that, it's all across the country. But they wanted something not for their daughter, but they wanted, because their daughter did not come to CooperRiis as a resident. She was helped with some other programs, especially one up in Vermont. But they wanted to try and create something so that other families would not have to go through the hell that they went through in trying to find something that would really provide good care.
And thank heavens they selected here, because scenically it's beautiful. Just looking out over, as I was waiting for you to come down your stairs from your lofty office here, I was looking out over the land, and it's some of those beautiful country. Is this a part of, I'm not going into great training, but people don't come here and stay in a room, and then they have classes and so forth. Just if you can kind of bottom line, a normal treatment would be actual activity with other people.
Well, here, for example, CooperRiis is a farm here in Polk County, and in Asheville, our center is not a farm; it's more of an urban setting. But here, the residents and staff work the farm together. The farm animals, the organic gardens, wood shop, kitchen, taking care of the grounds. It's a very active lifestyle, so that every day that a resident wakes up, they know that there's something for them to do so that they can contribute to the world that they're a part of. And then amidst their day, they'll have a meeting with our psychiatrist, they'll have a meeting with their psychotherapist, they'll have group sessions, individual sessions, meet with an exercise trainer, meet with a nutritionist.
So no one is isolated?
No, not at all. It's everyone has a private bedroom and so on, but it's really community living.
College,
it's like college
dorms.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, it sounds like you've got something really great here that we're hoping we can get the word out to what it's almost a type, well, it really isn't entrepreneurship when you consider that, because others had been done. But it is a community that is open for things such as this. We have lots of beautiful area, and we're hoping will learn that maybe this is a place we could try our entrepreneurship. I think this is a great word. And to have a facility like this in a small area, as I say, a dot on the map, but crossroads of the world, and you're attracting people from all over the world, you say.
Oh, we do. Yeah. 5 different countries so far since we opened, 42 different states.
Oh, one question before we run out of time here. I know you've got a busy schedule every day, and are you a resident here at CooperRiis? You and your family?
Well, my wife and I lived here. Actually, this was our house.
It's beautiful.
For about the first 5 years, and now we live just off-site, just a couple of miles down the road. We have, I think it's 21 staff that live on site. Altogether, for our whole program here and in Nashville, we have about 160 staff.
That was my next question. You read my mind.
Yes, about 160 staff. But just, the idea of the crossroads, partly because of what we are doing and what the Pavilion is doing that you may know about, which is Pavilion International.
I've read, but I couldn't tell you a definition of it.
Because it's an internationally known center for people who are recovering from addictions.
Okay.
Now, ours is a focus on mental health conditions, not addictions, but you have in Mill Spring, not just Polk County, two internationally known organizations that are sort of at this crossroads, sort of setting some of the paradigm for the coming decades in mental health care. Uh-huh. We also operate a national foundation out of CooperRiis, the country's first national community foundation for mental health care.
Now, is this funded anything by the government?
No, it's all entirely driven by private philanthropy, and also in that regard, half of the residents who are at CooperRiis are on scholarship. We give out about $2.5 million a year in scholarships.
In other words, if I were to have a member of my family that was having a problem, would they have to apply for this scholarship and qualify for it?
Right. As of the third month, we adjust the rate to whatever the family can afford and give a scholarship for up to 24 months. No one knows who pays what except for me and our chief financial officer, basically.
I had a question come to my mind about funding and scholarships. I know. Is there a limit on the stay that a person, do they max out at a certain time where you feel we can do no more for them? Or?
Well, most often, again, sort of like a college, and people are moving through because they want to recover. Yeah. So like here in this setting, their farm setting, the average stay is a little over 7 months. And then if they use our community program, they may stay there a year or more. Mm-hmm. So,
is there any way you ever can refer people who are graduating to someone who's looking for someone in that particular field, interview them for this job?
Yeah, I mean, we
don't do job placement.
We do. I mean, a lot of our residents are working with local employers with regular jobs. You know, these are most often very bright people, I would say in general, of above average intelligence and capacity. We have people, everywhere from the young 18-year-old who has no college to, and we've had doctors, former U.S. congressmen, lawyers.
You've had some pretty big names, I understand, who've been here, and of course, there's a complete anonymity.
Yeah, no, we have nationally known people who have been residents here. But I can't give you those names.
Well, no, because that would be defeating your purpose. Yeah. Because there would be a stigma, so-called, attached to that. And there's no stigma to these problems. And a lot of the things are caused by, as you say, medication can bring... I know I went through a little period myself after some surgery last year, and I was having trouble getting away from this horrible medicine that was making me just not quite myself. But it wasn't to the point where I had to come out. But a nice place for me to come. It's beautiful out here.
Yeah, well, medications can be life-saving. But for most serious mental health conditions, you do not need permanent high levels of medication. No. So, I mean, we have psychiatrists, and they help our residents with their medication, and we help our residents get to the lowest possible dose. And some people, after a while, don't need their medication. So this is something that is very wrongly understood in this country. It's misunderstood that if you have a serious mental health condition that you're supposed to take medication forever. There's no research that shows that that's true. Well,
we've had a lot of very famous people whose lives were cut short simply because the strain, when I won't name names, but the strain of many very high salaried stars have ended up dead much too early. And it's been proven they just couldn't stand the pace, I guess, and they put them on medication to carry them through. And you're here to revitalize those people and get them back into a normal way of life. There's just lots of things we could talk about here, but I know you're busy, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but maybe sometime we can come back and talk to you about some projects that you've got in mind that you'd like to do. I'm sure you... Yeah. Is there one plan, maybe one question, and then I'll dismiss you for the day, Mr. Stucker. Is there one project, is there one plan that you have in the back of your mind that's saying, I would like to try this?
Well, there's always stuff going on. I mean, at this point, if I think about nationally, I mean, we are involved in the national dialogues now going on through Washington, D.C., and my hope is that we will have a role in correcting some of the national conversation.
Great. Are you ever in on the stations? I mean, are you actually called to the Capitol ever for input with some of these councils?
I'm directly involved at this point.
Great.
Speaking all over the country.
Great.
So so it's something that CooperRiis is having a role in, and then locally, there are always ways that we're trying to contribute to what's happening in mental health care. North Carolina is sort of going in reverse. It's unfortunate. We're very concerned about local mental health systems, and not sure sometimes what we can do to support that. But we're looking at trying to work more with local employers to increase employment possibilities, maybe even start some local businesses for that purpose. We're looking at one particular one now, but it's premature to announce what it would be.
No, don't give it. I'm not asking for anything I shouldn't know.
No, it's okay.
But I've been around, as I said, this at one time there were 3,000. They've called them patients, but then they became residents back in Ohio, and I was very involved with that institution, and I have a very warm spot in my heart for this sort of treatment and seeing what the advances they have made, because they've taught that before some of these poor dear people could not even scrub their teeth. They were just put in and locked away. And one example, we were doing a program one day for them. We had a big party every summer outside, and they love music, and they listened to my little daily show, The Chatterbox. And I had a lot of real good friends there. And we were doing a program, and one of the entertainers that we had was singing a song. He was using the little recorder to accompany him. And he got the recorder fouled up, and he couldn't go on. And so he stopped and he said, well, I'll just sing it by myself. And they all laughed and applauded and so forth. And he started singing. I'll probably cry before I'm through with this, but he started singing. There was one of the residents there who had been there all of her life. And she she played piano. She had, I don't know when she learned that, but she played piano. And she turned around and she hit the note he was singing and continued playing for him the rest of that song.
Wow.
It just, it's just, I'm sure you see a lot of cases that bring tears to your eyes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You couldn't be in this work and not experience that.
Right. You have to have a lot of real good feelings down in your soul to work. It's a great place, and I hope maybe someday you'll allow us to come back and maybe talk about some of these innovations you'd like to see here, or some of the things that are going on, because mental health is a great problem. Addiction is a great problem in this country. I'm not saying anything new, but I'm just, from hearing the news, it's going on all around us. But maybe we can come back and talk to you again?
Sure, absolutely.
Good
That's
deal.
fine.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Vernon Stucker. And you don't have any relatives in Indiana?
No, well, maybe, but I don't know.
Well, if they hear this on the internet, they may be looking you up. Who knows? But they were great people, friends of ours. But I want to thank you so much, and for all the things that CooperRiis is doing for our fellow citizens here, not only in Polk County and North Carolina or South Carolina, but across the nation, across the world. And we thank you again very much. And we hope that you'll keep tuning in to the web page of the Tryon Daily Bulletin and listening to these Voices of the Foothills. Thank you so much. This is Deanie Pellegrin saying, have a real good day.